Sound for Alpha OneTV. Since I was subscribing, I send a be also be keep you updated. We are not like cash on your side in your BAT, so we're doing any chimney and kind of wing at the inch. In Chibia, and at the suspended Chief Justice, Mammy Torkornoo. Finally, about one thing at the concerns we bring about one thing apart from any injunction or true Godfrey Dame. I'm going to Supreme Court on one case about one thing I beg can say me brief personally. Oh, what you say? Process I would do a president Mahama name the committee in the first one. A man in your brain torture. A man of feel okay. So I'm call a committee meeting. I'm probe an allegation in Pono or quite could do her near general phones, near general laptop. Yes, my name for devices being real. I said the right is being infringed, so a bill be answering no mon cabimano. Na sa impeachment process no de ne fasono a ye nyamra kwan sono. So obi answering cabimano arches wa pa Supreme Court say the injunction no de abano. Among fasa injunction any brace and among form na in see that process no so arches a committee ne get a gusu na at least I'm maintaining as a Chief Justice and I don't name quite so manner. Na and I just a reply but I know she and this lawyer can say about one thing also the church on the side of the story I check out and say this Chief Justice if he say be a one I dream no and no there was some on my need so be a one I dream no even apart from the law no on no DNA right. No conscience won't mean detect Emma court no. Won't mean detect Emma government no. Won't mean detect Emma President Mahama doing it. A dear President Mahama no and no name rano quine no. Because o coin sense our day ban won't man status article C HAC while personal feelings the wide chill and a worker to gain public sympathy. Case now critical in conclusions and
a lot to talk about this morning, and those who may have seen the flyer, you know the conversation was supposed to center around the Galamsey issues. We'll get onto that shortly, but there's a bit of an update that has come through with regards to that big story that we've all been keeping our eyes on quite closely. The petition seeking the removal of the Chief Justice, Lady Chief Justice Gertrude Torkornoo, is one that keeps taking different dimensions, and we know that since the matter took off, the legal challenges that have been taking place have largely been initiated by individuals who are exercising their constitutional rights under Ghana's constitution to seek various forms of redress from the courts, raising constitutional matters. And we know that last week, for the first time, the Chief Justice on her own, through her lawyers, took a legal action, raising questions about two members of the committee that is probing her, saying that, well, they should stay off the committee. Now there's an update to that. She's filed a supplementary affidavit, and the lawyers explained that she is simply providing additional facts to the court in support of her application for injunction. And in that document that she has filed, very interesting revelations that we are learning for the very first time, and also what the CJ makes of the process against her. For the first time, she's directly commented on how she feels about it. In fact, she says that there's a ploy in place to remove her from office, and I just want to read that part to you before I bring you the other details. She says that the persistent violations of my constitutional rights show that the whole proceedings initiated against me are a mockery of justice and a ruse to unjustifiably remove me from office as Chief Justice. That is how she concludes the affidavit in which she has signed, and she introduces herself as I, Justice Gertrude Araba Esaba Saki Torkornoo, Chief Justice, make oath and say as follows. So those are her words, her own words, and she concludes by saying that she's been unjustifiably removed from office. And that is the first time she's commenting directly on the matters related to the petitions against her. So what has triggered her or occasioned her decision to comment in this manner? And we said that, well, she had filed an application for injunction. Now she says after filing the application for injunction, they went over to the committee for the hearing, and her lawyers brought to the attention of the committee the fact of the pendency of the injunction application, and the committee said that, well, they were not aware of that fact, and so they wanted copies of it. And she says that her lawyers made copies available. The matter was adjourned. They came the following day, and on that day, the committee indicated that they intend to proceed with the hearing. And she takes issues with that. She says that she finds it to be quite problematic. Now, beyond that, she now proceeds to list series of events that she believes amounts to abuse of her constitutional rights. So first, she raises concerns about where the hearing is taking place. She says it's taking place at a secured security installation. We are told it's close to the Osu Castle. She says in times past, such 146 proceedings takes place at judicial facilities. And when she gets to that facility, she says her mobile phone, her laptops are taken from her. That of her lawyers are also taken from them. And she says in terms of the petitioners, their lawyers are allowed to keep their laptops and mobile phones. Beyond that also, she says that her family, spouse and children are not allowed into the hearing room to observe proceedings. And I mean, one could easily hazard a guess that it's an in-camera proceeding that is taking place, but she expresses reservations about that as well. And so she makes the point that also at the very first hearing of the committee, the very first hearing that took place, when she was served with a hearing notice through her lawyers, she didn't show up on the first day. She says when her lawyers showed up on the first day, they indicated to the committee that, I mean, they are appearing on her behalf, and the committee said that, well, since the Chief Justice herself was not around, they were not going to recognize the lawyers. And so she said the committee then proceeded to fix the days for hearing without recourse to her lawyers' participation in that process. And she puts all this together to say that she's been subjected to a mental torture, her rights are being abused, and she believes that these additional facts should form the basis for the Supreme Court to injunct the committee from proceeding with its proceedings. So that is the update, and it was important to put all of this in context so that we know where we are in terms of this unfolding story. And I want to bring my guest in at this point in time, and I want to start with Hamza first. And I mean, the first time we are hearing from her directly. In fact, even though we had seen the injunction process, many had not seen the affidavit, and we've now seen the supplementary affidavits. I mean, it's one would say that, I mean, these are serious matters coming from the Chief Justice, so you hold a different view on that.
Absolutely not. Good morning to our cherished viewers out there, and of course, my brother in the studio. And you see, so much is happening in this country, Akabele, especially after the swearing-in ceremony of His Excellency President John Dramani Mahama. We have choked inspiring progress as far as our democracy is concerned. If for nothing at all, we succeeded through that singular act in bringing an end to a regime that suffocated the entire republic for 8 good years. Journalists in this country suddenly started losing their voices, and most of them at a point in time had to be flown out of the country. Sometimes it is important for us to remind ourselves of the journey that we have embarked upon so far, especially under the 4th Republican Constitution and in recent times. Today, that aura of freedom of speech is back. Today, we are at liberty to question government decisions and go home to bed knowing that nobody's going to haunt us. When it comes to the conduct or concerns of the Chief Justice, that is why the law courts are there. Government has acted in line with the constitutional dictate. The government is not pausing because Chief Justice suspended Torkornoo is before a commission of inquiry. Government is going ahead with its business. And it is important for us to let Madam Torkornoo understand that the survival of the country is not hinged on her position as Chief Justice or otherwise. It is not hinged on that. So like she's indicated she has done. Let us allow the law processes, law courts to take its due course.
But Hamza, at all points, government has always maintained that, they are acting within the confines.
But that is the point I'm making. That's why I've told you that I have given you the background.
Yeah,
I am struggling to appreciate where, in the last 6 months, this government has acted outside the laws of our country. Or outside the legitimate expectations of the Ghanaian people.
How do you process her point? She makes the point that, as far as she's concerned, judicial independence is under assault. That they have to protect the security of tenure of the Chief Justice.
That's why I made the point that the survival of our democracy and whether indeed our judiciary is working or not is not hinged on her remaining Chief Justice or otherwise.
Okay.
I made that point. Our constitutional dictates are clear. Under Article 146 of the Constitution, there's a process that needs to be activated if petitions are filed. Ghanaians took advantage of that particular provision. They have filed petitions to His Excellency the President. The President has acted in line with that particular process and forwarded same to the Council of State. The Council has proceeded to establish a committee in conjunction with the President to deal with those matters. The Presidency is concerned about dealing with many other teething challenges of our society. So we are not, I don't see where the interference is coming from. And you just read it.
In fact, she says that...
Is that the first committee to have sat there?
She says the committees, the 146 committees in the past always took place in judicial...
You see, that has always been my problem. That has
made to go to secured security installation for the hearing to take place.
I think that in her mind, everybody is supposed to act in line with what she believes to be the right thing. You remember the prima facie establishment? When she demanded that the letter should have been given to her first before given to the committee, the Council of State. You remember? Because that was the operative philosophy in her mind. But the court proved otherwise. Today, she feels that she has the right to determine to the good people of this country where committees should sit. Is it stated in the Constitution 1992 where that particular committee that is set up by the President and in conjunction with Council of State, where they should sit? Is the venue provided? So where is that coming from? Is the castle, old castle, is that not a state facility? Doesn't it belong to the state? The Supreme Court buildings, are they not part of the state assets? So the state, depending on availability, can decide to allocate any state asset for such purposes. Madam Torkornoo cannot dictate to this republic or the President of the Republic where such hearings should be conducted. The Emerson Commission on the West Wagon was held at that same premises. And then Nana Danko Akufo-Addo. What was wrong with it? It's a state facility. It's a state. It's something you cannot take away from the state. Look at the reasons that she's abusing. I can't blame. The Constitution says in-camera proceedings.
Hamza, don't you have a problem?
I'll get
don't you have a problem when you, for instance, read, and in the context of, there are those who are making a point that think of His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, think of the Right Honorable Aban Bamin, and think of her ladyship, the Chief Justice, and think of the fact that she goes to a room where she's going for a hearing. She says she was searched. They took away her mobile phone, her telephone, and laptops, even though the counsel for the petitioners had access to their phones.
You see, but that is the point I am making. That's the point I am making. Are the petitioners of the lawyers of the petitioners facing the committee? The committee has been instituted because of somebody. Is that not the case? And if you have concerns, has she raised those concerns with the chairman of the committee? These are questions we should be interested in asking. In any case, the proceedings are supposed to be in camera. Why would they allow you to go in there with your camera or your mobile phones? For what? to record what? They cannot guarantee that you will not record it. Secondly, if in camera, if the proceedings are supposed to be in camera, why do you want to go there with your wife and children? And so if there is anybody whose conduct questions the legitimacy and the confidence Ghanaians must have in the judiciary, indeed, it is her conduct. Because you are, for goodness sake, you occupy an important position as Chief Justice, and you ought to know the meaning of in-camera proceedings. So if you begin to make statements to the effect that you were denied, your children were denied entry into in-camera proceedings, then legitimately people can begin to question the sort of judgments that were handed down from the apex court of our land, especially when you were presiding. Why would you want to go into in-camera proceedings with your husband and wife, your children? Who does that, Akabli? And you want us to waste time discussing this issue? That is clearly effusions of a woman probably who is struggling to find the grounds to defend herself. The contents of the petitions are there. Let us focus on the contents. Let her go through the process and clear herself. If at the end of the day she's cleared, I am pretty much convinced that His Excellency President John Dramani Mahama would not have any difficulty or whatsoever reinstating her. But until that is done, we will not allow her to take us on an emotional roller coaster. I mean, simply to win sympathy, to subvert this constitutional process. That will not be entertained in this country. I mean, even if His Excellency President Mahama is found wanted, as far as the laws of this country is concerned, we would make sure that he's taken through the laws of the country. Let alone.
Do you hold the same position on another fact that she pleads? And as a lawyer yourself, I mean, when you go to court, there are instances that your client is not present in court. You go there, you do the case, but she says, well, she wasn't present. The panel said that they are not going to recognize her lawyer. The panel proceeds to fix hearing dates without recourse to her lawyer who was present.
Of course, the panel is clothed with the legal authority to do so. Even if you go to court, normal courts, to represent somebody who is not a plaintiff or a defender who is not in court, the judge can decide based on what knowledge is available to him at that particular moment to say that he's not going to recognize you, because there's no basis to indicate, apart from what you would have filed, that you are acting on behalf of that person. Anybody at all can be an imposter. So the point is, she should pay attention to the contents of the petition and spare us that emotional roller coaster. I think that for her and her legal team, it is a political football. So they want to take the nation away from the constitutional requirements and box us in the political fault to engage in a political banter. But I can assure them that as far as this government is concerned, we will resist that temptation, because our fidelity to the 1992 Constitution is unmatched.
Okay.
So we will continue to respect it. His Excellency President Mahama and his government will continue to focus on delivering on the many campaign promises that they made to the good people of this country. If at any point in time his rule is required after the committee's work is done, I am convinced that His Excellency will find time again to discharge his constitutional obligations with regards to the work of that particular committee. But Akable, until that is done, we must send a strong signal to the attorneys and the Chief Justice for that matter that this country will not accept their invitation to go on that political trajectory or emotional roller coaster seeking to win sympathy outside the committee's work or the commission's work.
Okay.
They must concentrate on what is happening there.
Okay.
And take charge of the processes to register their concerns. Sitting at the Flagstaff House, that was the name, Old Parliament Castle, is also one of the reasons she enumerated.
Yeah.
Not so?
Yes.
I was for we say one sanga the white CB. I just a mammy Torkornoo-Lawyer no brain torture, Supreme Court and sorry, no one can be man, no one born impeachment process and in me hot and the through NDC lawyers for normal born seminar to agu. No, or more country mammy to come say one fee papa because position a good no, in your position get one. I was think I will be beyond back by the law. I saw casting your name on Omi say, Emranisi say, because Oko quarter, and yet the wide chair on the can of the Emrane cano and the eka. Now, so no, mammy to come for the first time or the personal concerns about one thing. Who say Bibia Chese, a be a committee no, and a president not to mra. And there I say, meeting no, ye probe your allegation in camera. Chese, and you can't say quabonting. You can't say record the secret. You can't say the camera is also. If you want a meeting on near my Canada, that wanting social media no be can wasam. A ban is our constitution, ya tomara. Visit constitution is obi bunen in Tiana say autumnal punishment or so concerns are the bad one thing number one watcher say kushia committee na omojo phones omojo laptop omojo devices biano to you no say alright and you infringing so yeah my own first animal in room na no leak audio be about one thing, leak video be about one thing. Now I the question committee. Now I the best show. Now ye I dare say income rate and a better one thing. Ye na process no I choke. So we will be a boom rano. Now Tim Rana see I dare say income rano. Committee need to mean guarantee say obe record and unrecorded. So ye jail to wa enka then it just omo boomra. Ebia we no o phone no ya farm or laptop no ya farm and I'll jo phone I'll jo laptop no may be important also ya delete ono the yes omo boomra. So ya jo laptop ajo o phone so no that means any leak video any leak audio be about bontim ya no intimi fan show no on crowd no a committee for none of the best and the lawyers for your mom quite mom reading and the camera ne devices are holding him to record bibiano a remono or money bit him this honey man so you know intimate fast cases in no crying the ambo one be protected. Sarcasm I mean I'll say I'm sometimes o person do kuno and no ma a committee na say why Ukuno no ma eko peden committee na se. Ade ese ni kwazo bia atibi eye wonne o lawyer ne committee no nko a. Ukuno eno ma eko peden committee na se. Yes allow ma ukuno no ma no inso phones and laptops. How? Any in camera na esha one of us over na also. So okay can we na aya o kai position ekutawo. So we achieve justice. Uni mrani munye na ona achieve. Tentri nyina no ona eson. To be a uni mrani mu say. Na oka dia enye sana mrani chire like how? And because of that and when you're a brain torture. So right now the suspended chief justice and assist or kasa to gain public sympathy. Or kasa sene be a man for beke be a man. Meanwhile, untimin chair say President Mahama afloppy. Meanwhile, untimin chair say Emremono committee ne niema omoya no oma floppy. Nemum she is speaking outside the constitution. The constitution can. So right now no a young momunim di. Mom ye lawyers for air catch and say untimin detective Emma court no. Untimin chair the court and engine. Untimin chair the Emrane cano. Untimin enkase emfa mrane ntoni nti dono no kanimo. There be. Yenyina no emrano ene edi adwuma. And because of the constitution na emrano no ene na amwanya sa position na wo no. Without the constitution no there is no chief justice. there's no committee, there's no blah 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 blah. We can for so be any so in the Emrane cano any dear Juma, the same run ammonia benefit I'm all team the casano. So right now is speaking a day. Means I'm not working cano and this is for a while too. I just say yes, sir, exposing a Kesi pa with a dream be aside the Ekutano, aside the working cano, or my side exposing. So comment section or the subscribe nation money or saying any bintia for once in your Akroma.